guys, welcome back to the next part in the Build a Spotify app series. In the last part, we started putting together the ability to create playlists. And in this part, we're going to specifically work on actually interacting with the items in the playlist. So that's adding songs as well as deleting songs from our playlist. So that all said, if it all sounds good to you, make sure you start by hitting the like button down below, opening up Xcode, and we're going to jump back into our XC workspace here. Let's go ahead and jump first and foremost back into our library playlist view controller. Let me go ahead and find it here, library playlist view controller. And at the moment, when you tap on one of these playlists that we created, nothing else really happens. And the reason is because we didn't implement it yet. So let's go ahead and bring in the delegate function for our table view. So we're going to say did select item at index path, did select row at index path is what I meant. And first thing we're going to do is actually deselect it, which is simply going to unhighlight it. The next thing we want to do is actually get the nth playlist that we actually went ahead and selected. So all I'm going to do is from the playlists collection, we're going to go ahead and grab the nth item. And now we can actually open this playlist up by simply passing it into our reusable playlist view controller. And we'll go ahead and do that playlist. We can say navigation controller. We're going to say push view controller for VC animated true. And let's see, for this last one here, we are going to say VC, let's try that one more time, VC, and animated is true. I'm also going to go ahead and say VC.navigation item, not controller. And we're going to say on this, navigation item. And on this, we're going to say the large title display mode is never. Go ahead and hit Command R. And let's see, what is the issue we have? Deselect that index path, animated is true with 1E. Go ahead and hit Command R to build and run. And now when we tap into the playlist, we should hopefully, see a playlist here. There's no default actual icon for the playlist cover, and there's no tracks in here either. So what I'm going to also go ahead and do is we're going to jump into the playlist header view, I think is what we called it. Playlist header view. Let me make sure we're in the right thing. Yep, playlist header view collection reusable view. And what I'm going to go ahead and do in here is we want to show a default image since we don't have one at the moment for this playlist. So I'm going to go ahead and say we're setting an image right here, the last line of our configure function. Let's go ahead and add a placeholder parameter. And this is going to be a system image named photo, just like that. And let's try that one more time. We should see a default placeholder image when we tap into any of our playlists here, just like that. So now we want to work on actually being able to add tracks into our actual playlist now. So we can do that in one of a few ways, right? The first thing that we could do is, when you're playing a song, we can go ahead and have an option to go and add it to our actual playlist. But instead of doing that, what I'm going to opt to do instead is we're going to introduce the ability to long tap, press and hold onto one of these cells. And when we go ahead and do that, we're going to get that positioned item, and we are going to show an action sheet at the bottom here and ask if the user wants to add it as a song in one of the playlists here. So before we actually hook up that UI, let's go back and hook up our actual API call to introduce all this playlist adding business. So I'm going to search a playlist in here. And I think we wrote out the function already. I think it's something like add track to playlist. Let me go ahead and find it. Here it is. So add track to playlist. We go ahead and pass in a track as well as a playlist. First thing we need to do is actually create the request. So I'm going to say create a request with a URL. It's going to be with a string. We're going to take the base API URL and add in whatever the suffix is. I'm going to guess and say it's a post. And the completion here is going to give us a base request All right, we're gonna go ahead and align all of this. And let's go ahead and look at the documentation here. So here is the API call to add items to a playlist. It's a post request, and here is the suffix. So I'm gonna copy this first and foremost, and we're gonna drop it into the URL that we're creating here, just like that. It has an inline path element, which should be the playlist ID. So what I'm going to do is interpolate playlist.id, just like that. And now on this request, we actually need to go ahead and mutate it. So I'm going to make a mutable copy, which is var, so it's mutable. And we need to set two things. The first thing is we're going to set a HTTP body. And if you take a look here, I already read through it, but basically the HTTP body, if I can find it, needs to be a comma separated list of URIs of whatever tracks you want to go ahead and add to this playlist. So the nomenclature of these URIs is Spotify track the ID of the track. Then you can pass this in as a part of a get parameter, or you can pass it in as a part of the actual JSON body parameter. I'm going to do it as a JSON body parameter since I think it's a little cleaner. So before we go ahead and assign this, I'm going to create the JSON up here. So we'll say JSON is going to be URIs. And let me go ahead and drop this in here, and it's going to be suffixed by the track.id. Let me make sure it was URIs plural. Just be careful about that. Yep, it's in fact URIs. And that is our JSON body. Now we need to get this and have it serialized as data before we assign it to the HTTP body. So we're going to say JSON serialization, and we're going to say data with JSON object, JSON, and here we're going to say fragments allowed, just like that. Now this call can throw, so we're going to say try question mark, so try optional. If it does throw, it'll just resolve nil. And let's see, I think that's all we need. I recall there's one more thing maybe. Yes, there is one more thing. If we go ahead and set a post body, it's also requiring us to say the content type is application dash JSON. And this is going to go in as a header value on the request. So we're going to say request set value application slash JSON. And you definitely want to spell application correctly. And the actual header is going to be content type, which I just copy and pasted. And finally, we can actually kick this request off by saying task is a URL session shared. And we're going to say data task with a request and a completion handler. So there is our actual request. Here is the completion, which has a data, response, and an error. We've done this so many times at this point. You guys should hopefully know the drill. We're going to unwrap the data. We're going to validate that the actual error is nil. We're going to go ahead and say task.resume. If something goes wrong, we'll say completion. And I think this takes a bool, if I recall. Yep, this takes a boolean as the parameter of our completion closure. Otherwise, what we can go ahead and do is we are going to decode the result. So we're going to say result is JSON serialization, JSON object from the data, allowing fragments. And in the catch, we're going to say completion is false. And in this case, what we will first do is we'll first put a try here because that's important. And we're going to say if let response is results as string any, comma, response as string. Let's see what the response looks like. Looks like it gives you a single keyback of snapshot. So we're just going to validate that we have a snapshot. So we're going to say in the results of that does not equal nil. In other words, we have it. We can assume that the call was successful. So I'm going to say completion is now true. Go ahead and hit Command B and make sure everything is compiling. We have a gotcha somewhere. Let's see what I screwed up in here. So we're saying if let response is result as a dictionary, then we're saying from response response from response, get the snapshot ID and try to unwrap that as a string and make sure it's not nil. So cool, that fixes our error. The last thing that's left to do is actually hook up the call site of this API. So let's go ahead and do that. So we have tracks not only on this first tab here, but if you go into a playlist and you tap and hold on one of these, this one should show the action sheet as well. And same thing for an album. So I'm going to do it on the home controller just to start off with, and we'll see how far we get if I have any issues. So we're going to go to home view controller. And what we're going to basically do is we're going to add a gesture recognizer to this collection view. And when the user long presses, taps and holds, we're going to go ahead and try to figure out which cell they're tapping and holding on. So let me go up to view did load if I can find it. There it is. And at the bottom here, we're going to say add long tap gesture. And we're just going to make a new function for this, and it's going to be private. And what we'll do in here is we're going to say let gesture is a UI tap gesture recognizer. We're going to go ahead and instantiate it with a target and then a selector, which is going to be did long press. We'll just say did long press, just like that. And let's see, we are going to say collection view. We're going to say add gesture recognizer, and this will be gesture, just like that. Go ahead and make sure you create your selector here. Now, what do we actually want to do in here? Well, the first thing we're going to check is we want to make sure the gesture is in a particular state. So that reminds me that we need to take in a parameter here of the actual gesture. We're going to say this is a long press gesture recognizer, and go ahead and assign or re-enter in did long press, and it'll add the underscore and colon, so it passes in a reference of the gesture. And here we're going to say guard that the gesture's state is began. Otherwise, we're going to return. And if the gesture is in the state of began, we can try to go ahead and resolve if the user has gone ahead and long pressed in the actual collection view. So we should have a touch point, which is gesture dot touch point, I believe. Let's see. Location of touch, I guess we can use. So there should be another variant in here that I'm looking for. Let's see, let's look for points. I'm going to command click into UI long press gesture and see if I can find it. We're looking for, let's see, number of taps, number of touches, minimum press. So these are all configuration things that we want, which is not really what we need. So we are going to get the touch out of here. And I'm going to quickly look up how to do that since I can't remember off the top of my head. So instead of actually getting the touch, what I realized is what we need to do is get gesture, and we want to actually get the location of the touch in a particular view. And the view we care about is the collection view. And this is going to give us a touch point out to us, which is a CG point. And then what we could do is we can say guard let the index path where the user actually touched is collection view, and we want to get the index path for item at a particular point. So this function right here, we can pass in the touch point, and it's going to go ahead and return optional if I'm not mistaken. So we can go ahead and put it in the guard statement just like that. And now, based on this index path, we want to compute which cell was actually long tapped on. So we know that everything up here is section 0. This is section 1, and everything in this recommended tracks is section 2. So what we also could put in this guard statement is another check, and that can guard that we are in section 2. So I'm going to say index path dot section equals 2. And now that we have this, we can actually get out of our models that we're holding on here the recommended track out of tracks at the given nth position. So let's go ahead and get the model. We're going to say the model is tracks, and we're going to get index path dot row. And that is going to be our particular track. If you go ahead and start typing in model, it'll tell you down here that it is an audio track. And what are we going to now do? we are going to create an action sheet. So I'm going to say action sheet is a UI alert controller. We're going to create this with a title. The title is going to be the model.name, which is the name of the song. And we are going to add a message here of, would you like to add this to a playlist? And it is going to be of type action sheet for the preferred style. We're going to line break all of this stuff. And I'm going to come down here. The last thing we're going to want to do is present the action sheet, so might as well add it. We also want to go ahead and add a cancel action. So we're going to add an action. It's going to be a UI alert action with a title of cancel, a style of cancel, and a handler of nil. And then we're going to add in another action here, which is going to have a handler. It'll be default. And the action title is going to be add to playlist. Now, when the user taps on add to playlist, we actually need to ask them which playlist do you want to add this song to. So what we will really need is kind of another controller to pop up listing out the user's playlists, and they want to basically pick one of them. So we already have a controller where we're listing the playlists out. It's the library one. So what we're going to do is we're going to be smart about it. We're actually going to reuse that controller. So I'm going to create that library playlist view controller here. I'm going to go ahead and say self present that view controller with an animation. And let's see, we don't need a completion handler. We're also going to go ahead and say this is weak self. And let's see what's going on. This should be optional since it's now weak self. We're presenting VC, animated is true. Let's see, I don't see any issues here. Let's see why this is yelling at me, because this is not the right object. Library, playlist, view controller, that's what I'm looking for. And we also want to do all of this on the main thread. So I'm going to wrap this all into dispatch queue main async, since this is a closure for a given action. And we want basically a way for the user, a way for this controller to know when you tap on one of these, instead of opening up the playlist, we want to actually pass it back to our caller. So I'm going to say VC selection handler is what we're going to call it. Selection handler is going to be a closure, and this is going to return the playlist that the user selected. So we're going to say playlist in. I'm going to jump into this library playlist view controller by clicking it and doing just jump to definition. And we're going to add that closure up here. So we're going to say public var selection handler, and this is going to return to the caller a selected playlist. Hopefully I spelled that right. Yep, playlist, just like that. And the way that we are going to inform the table view when you tap on one of these, instead of opening up the playlist detail view, what we're going to do is we're going to essentially check if that selection handler is set or not. So what we're going to do is here we're going to say guard that the selection handler is nil. Else, what we are going to go ahead and do is we're going to pass in the actual playlist into the selection handler. So here is the playlist that was selected. If it's nil, we can go ahead and continue. Otherwise, I'm going to pass in the position that the user tapped into the handler. And we're also going to go ahead and say dismiss view controller, animated true, completion is nil. So let's go back to our home controller now, where we were actually presenting this. I'm going to hit Command B so this selection handler error goes away. And what we're going to actually do is, instead of presenting this VC directly, I'm going to make one more edit. We're going to take this and I'm going to put it inside of a navigation controller. And we're actually going to present that controller, because what it allows us to do is now we can set a nice title on this controller. And I'm going to say select playlist, just like that. And we can also add a cancel option to it in case the user wants to cancel. What we can also do is I'm going to go back into this controller one more time, and we're going to add a cancel bar button item. So what we'll say is at the bottom of view did load, we're going to say if the selection handler does not equal nil, in other words, the user is selecting, we're going to say the navigation item, left bar button item is going to be a UI bar button item. And we're going to go ahead and have it be a close item. Target will be self. Action will be a selector did tap close. And did tap close is going to basically simply dismiss the controller. Go ahead and create that as a handler here. I totally screwed up with that with a bunch of typos. Let's try that one more time. And we're just going to say in here dismiss. And the animation will be true. Completion will be nil. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Command R. We're going to tap and hold on one of those cells and see what happens. So first and foremost, if I tap and hold on one of these up here, nothing should happen, which looks to be working. But if I come down here and I tap and hold on this one, for example, we should start seeing a action sheet, which it looks like we are not. So let's see what the heck is going on. So I'm definitely tapping and holding on these. I'm going to go back to our home view controller. And what I'm going to start by doing is adding breakpoints in here. And we're going to see, what's going on. So we're going to add a breakpoint there. We're going to also add a breakpoint here. And I have a hunch we're probably getting stuck right there. So let me also print out the touch point just so we can see what's actually happening. This is going to be point, colon. This will be touch point. And let's go ahead and give that a run once more. All right. Hopefully we see something printed out here. So breakpoints are always great ways to debug your code, as you've seen me use them personally here. So let's go ahead and tap and hold. And let's see what the heck is going on. So it looks like we're not even coming into this function. So let me also put a print up here of, let's see, did hold. Go ahead and give that a run. And if that's the case, then it probably means our gesture is not configured properly. So we're going to go ahead and tap and hold on this. And we're not actually even printing that out, which leads me to believe that our gesture is not getting added. So let's see why that is. Are we even calling this function? Let's see, add long press. Yep, we're definitely calling it. I'm going to go ahead and say that the user interaction on this is true. And let's see what else we can configure on this gesture. So on the gesture, we can say number of masks required or button mask, taps required, touches. Let's see. I don't think we need any of that, but let's go ahead and try that one more time. Worst case worst, if we need to add the gesture, we can add it to the view. I'm going to tap and hold. And we are still not seeing it. So let's see why that is. So I'm going to tap and hold here. Still not seeing it. Let's go ahead and add this gesture recognizer to the current controller's view instead of wasting more time and kind of debugging why that's not working. I'm sure I have a weird error somewhere. Gonna tap and hold and shoot, we're still not seeing it. So let me go ahead and see what is going on. So, oh, I know why, because this is the tap gesture. That is not what we want. Long press gesture recognizer is what we want. Very silly little typo there. Go ahead and fix that and change that back to collection view, and now it should be working. The tap gesture is pretty obvious of why it doesn't work. All right, tapping and holding, and there hits our breakpoints. I'm gonna get rid of this print. I'm also gonna get rid of this. And let's get rid of this one too. I have a hunch it's gonna work now. We're gonna pause the app and run it one more time. Let's see what's going on now. So if I tap and hold on one of these cells up here, no action sheet should appear, just like so. If I tap and hold one of these playlists, this should also be good. But if I tap and hold one of these recommended songs, we should see an action sheet just like that. Awesome. So here is the name of the song that we tapped and held. There's our message, and we are going to say add to a playlist. It's going to pop up this controller, and it's going to ask us, which playlist do we want to add it to? I'm going to add it to our last playlist. That selects it and passes it back to our completion here. And now all that's left to do is go ahead and add to our, or rather call our API caller and add to that playlist. So what I can do now is say API caller shared, and let's see, add track to playlist. The track is going to be the model. The playlist we're going to add to is playlist, and completion is going to be success in. Now, if it succeeds, you could choose to show a alert. I'm not going to do that here. what we're going to do is we're simply going to print out added to playlist success is going to be success. It's really up to you what you want to do at this point, but we're just going to do that. And let's see what happens when we try to add something. We might have an API error. We will see. So I'm going to stick with, I don't know, let's go ahead and let me select something in here. We have Holy Grail by Jay-Z. We're going to go ahead and get rid of all the stuff in the console by hitting Command K. I'm going to select add to playlist. We're going to pick this one here. And what the heck happened? It doesn't actually look like our action got called, or we never called the completion, one or the other. But let's go ahead and click back into this add track and let's see what happened. Might have a silly typo again. So here is our request. I'm going to say print adding. This is completion false. Oh, we never actually, oh, looks like we actually don't call completion in this case. So we're going to say completion false in this case. Let's go ahead and run it and let's see if we can try that again. Before we do that, I'm going to go and click into that playlist to see if something got added. Looks like nothing actually got added. And instead of actually just printing out false or just saying false, let's also print out what we're getting back from the API, because there might be something wrong in our request. Let's go ahead and do that. All right, so these prints are always helpful to see, like, what's actually going on. Let's go and tap and hold one of these. We're going to add it to playlist. Whoops, we don't want to cancel. Let's try that one more time. All right, we're going to say add to playlist. We're going to stick with this first one here. It should go ahead and print some stuff out. So it's giving us an error parsing JSON. Interesting. So what's going on with the JSON here? So we have URIs, and it looks like this is Spotify, track, and then the track ID. So let me go ahead and let's print out this JSON. Let me also jump to the API here and let's see what the heck it wants. So we have a content type, and let's see, we don't need the playlist ID we passed in already. So URIs is a comma separated list of Spotify URIs to add. Can it be track or episodes? It's URIs equals Spotify track and then the ID. So you can do one or more. I don't believe you need the comma if it's only one. And if you want it to be a part of this, oh, I see. So URIs is supposed to point to an array of URIs. Got it. Okay, so not just a string. So that is totally my bad. So we're going to update this here. And this should point to an array. And we're just going to have a single URI on here. So there's a good lesson if you should always read the documentation. I kind of just assumed it was going to be a comma separated. But the reason I know it's an array is because this is a little bracket right there. So let's go ahead and give it a run once more. And we're going to see what we get printed out. I think we can probably tackle removing from playlists as well, assuming this works. Let's go ahead and add. We're going to add to this one. And let's see, what do we get back? We get playlist success was true. So now let's go to our library here. Now we're going to tap into this playlist and boom, there is our playlist song. And you'll also see here that it updated the cover of our playlist because there's only one track in there. So let's go ahead and add a couple more tracks in there and let's see what ends up happening. So we're going to come into here and I'm going to add this one. We're going to add that one there. Let's go ahead and add that. All right. You might want to just show an alert if it fails. Let's go ahead and add this one. Now there's one edge case we didn't handle, which I'm going to skip, is if you try to add the same song again. But anyways, let's go back to this and tap into this. And just like that, we have all of our songs in here. So definitely working. So let's see, now what we want to do is we want the ability for the user to be able to swipe a row to delete it from the playlist. It should be fairly simple to do. What we'll do in this video is, actually, let me just not do it in this video. We'll do it in the next videos to just keep things a little focused and organized. So the next video, we'll take a look at removing a song from a playlist and the swipe to delete functionality. So if you enjoyed the video, definitely hit like down below, subscribe to the channel, leave any comments, questions, concerns. I try to reply fairly quickly. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.